Hey everybody, welcome to viewer questions for this week. Thank you for joining me yet again. I am Lee Camp, and this is not Redacted Tonight. I'm used to saying it's Redacted Tonight. In a minute here, I'm gonna tear Joe Biden fucking limb from limb because he deserves it, and they're all talking about. Anyway, we'll get to that in a second. Stick around for the winners of my free comedy special. You'll get the comedy special download if you left a comment in the comment section of viewer questions last week. We'll pick two people to win the comedy special. All right, Joe Biden, they're all talking about it. Finally, they started to actually look at what Joe Biden is saying a little bit, the media, and he basically is touting that he was friends and worked well with segregationists who used to be in the Senate in the 70s. And that's the thing with Joe Biden. Okay, so he's a fucking catastrophe, and everybody's just tried to whitewash especially our media, just tried to whitewash his record to say, oh, things will go right back to good. Everything will be awesome if we just get Joe Biden into office. Joe Biden is the fucking worst, all right? He is a neocon dipshit, and I think we just found it funny when he was vice president that he was Uncle Joe, and nobody's actually looking at his record, which spans like decades and decades. He has bragged, and so I have a list here. I want to go through some of them. He has bragged about being friends with segregationists, and this goes years and years. The segregationist, straight up racist. He gave the eulogy at Strom Thurmond's funeral. Strom Thurmond was one of the biggest racist pieces of shits to ever serve in the Senate, and Biden was his buddy, like his pal. Like Laverne and Shirley, like skipping down the street. And that's not the only one. Biden is friends with racists because Biden is kind of racist. All right? Going to that point, he helped create the fact that we are the number one prison state in the world. We have the most prisoners, and we have the most prisoners per capita in the world. And part of that is thanks to Joe Biden, because Joe Biden was running around pushing the war on drugs, making the offenses, the mandatory sentencing harsher. And he proudly, let's see if I have the quote in here. No, I don't have the quote, but he was proud of the fact that he made it so that you get a minimum of 5 years mandatory in prison for having a rock of crack cocaine no bigger than a quarter. Like, you're caught with some crack, and I agree, people shouldn't do crack. That's probably not good for you. Don't do that. Don't do that. But destroying 5 years of someone's life, not to mention all the shit that goes down when they get out, and families and communities, because someone had this in their pocket? Are you out of your fucking mind? And on top of that, these drug laws were racist because crack cocaine, which was used more in the black community, had far harsher sentences than powder cocaine, right? Powder cocaine, which was a white people's drug, this is, maybe a little bit less true now, more true, I don't know, but this is what it was when they set the laws. Powder cocaine was a white person's drug mostly, and the sentence for that was like negligible. But crack cocaine, which was more in the black communities, the sentences were minimum of 5 years. It's completely racist. All right, so that's a couple of things. He also, to get back to who he's friends with, he talked about Dick Cheney is a good guy. A year ago, he gave the Medal of Liberty to George W. Bush and talked about how wonderful a president he was. This is the guy you want to make president, that you want to hold up as the answer to Donald Trump? Is the guy who says Dick Cheney's a good man? He's supported all of our endless imperialist wars. He supported our endless police state, never questioning it. Hardly ever talks about climate change unless it's fucking in his protesters in his face, and then he'll go, yes, climate change is a crisis, because he knows he's supposed to say it. Let's see, what else has he done? Oh, as you all know, he's terrible on women. Like on women, like he's on women. Like he's terrible on women, and he's terrible on women. Like all this touching and grabbing and smelling people's hair? Really, guys? Really mainstream media. You're going to put Joe Biden in front of us? Fuck you. And the polling, I talked about this on Redacted Tonight, the polling where they're like, Joe Biden is winning by 1,000,000 points. It's because CNN, which is doing the polling, didn't talk to anyone under the age of 50. I'm not kidding. You can look at the dynamics of the poll. They didn't talk to anyone under 50, and they're like, Joe Biden's winning. Yeah, Joe Biden is winning among people that haven't turned on the news in 15 years. Because they can't hear it well. I don't know what they're saying with the faces. Also very pro Wall Street. Loves Wall Street. Helped repeal the Glass-Steagall Act, which was kind of a dividing wall between banks and limitless exploitation of the American people. And now, once that dividing wall was pulled away under Bill Clinton, you see what happened. The 2008 collapse ultimately happened. And Joe Biden was right there, front and center, behind all of it, supporting all the trade deals, all the awful corporate grab trade deals. And Joe Biden's biggest contributor through his entire career has been a large credit card company. The guy comes from Delaware, the #1 tax haven state. I can't, he's fucking awful. All right, Joe Biden is the worst. Of all of those fucking scumbags running for president, Joe Biden is the worst. So, and so don't believe these polls. And finally you hear our media saying something about it. And like I said, I always hate talking about presidential candidates this early, but hopefully some of the things I'm talking about, the topics that I'm talking about, like the supporting the corporate trade deals and supporting the big banks and Wall Street and prison industrial complex, those topics are important. So hopefully I can cram some of that stuff in there while we, do the big song and dance on Joe Biden or whatever presidential candidate. I'm going to get to viewer questions here in a minute, where one of the viewer questions has to do with presidential candidates, so we're going to get a little more of that. But quick note, I am performing live. I have live shows coming up in London, England. I'm finally getting over to the UK, over to the Europe area. Over the world, getting across the pond. One show, August 18th. That is it. One show and out. I cannot be there any longer. One show. No, I love it over there, but I don't have the time. So, London, England, August 18th. But I'm also performing in Montreal, Kansas City, Missouri, Minneapolis, Madison, Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and Washington, D.C. And all of that info is at leecamp.com. Click the schedule tab, and you can also vote for your city to be added to the tour. So live shows coming up, awesome openers like Eleanor Goldfield and Krish Mohan and Naomi Caravani. So check out those shows. All right. Also check out my podcast, Common Censored, free every week. Any podcast thing you listen on, the doohickey, what they call phone, if you listen on the phone. No, but you get on Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, Wiggly Wax. We used to have Wiggly Wax. We're on there too. We're on Hibbity Gibbets and Piddly Books. Pretty sure I made up most of those. Made up most of them. I think Stitcher's real though. Just so you know. All right, let's get to viewer questions, listener questions, whatever you call them. This is in reference to the crazy mainstream media lies about North Korea, where they're like, Kim Jong-un executed this guy with a bathtub full of crocodiles. And then a day later, people see the guy walking around, and New York Times will then be like, oh, it turns out he's alive. But we're going to leave up that article about how he was assassinated without any correction. So Steely Steve says, I guess, those sanctions are really working. He's talking about sanctions those sanctions are really working. Look at Cuba, Venezuela, Russia, and Iran. Happy face, maybe? Is that what that is? Just you hand. I think he means wait. Just you wait. In 500 years or so, they will succumb and become puppets of the U.S. government devil face. And so obviously his point, his emoji-laden point, is that these sanctions aren't bringing down these countries, but, and some could say, oh, well, they're not working at all. Well, they are working in a certain sense. They're killing people. They're killing lots and lots of people. Latest official report on Venezuela is that our sanctions have killed 40,000 people over the past couple years in Venezuela due to medications they can't get, various forms of health care, various foods that causing nutrition problems, and they're estimating 40,000. The biggest thing is health care and medications that they can't get, such as AIDS medications, diabetes, insulin, and they can't get that because of us, because we're going to destroy your people because we don't like the type of government you have, or the type of situation you dropped the U.S. dollar, or we've got our reasons. Venezuela is the largest oil reserves in the world. That may have played a tiny little role, did it? Did it play a role? Come on, admit it. Little role, a little bit. So they aren't working in that these countries aren't collapsing, but they are working in that they're killing people. And we're very proud of that. The U.S. government's very proud of all the people we're killing with our sanctions. Rex Tillerson, when he was Secretary of State, said in a public forum, public conversation, that we know our sanctions on North Korea are working because fishermen are washing up dead in South Korea. So the fishermen boats in North Korea, the fishermen starved to death, and then those boats wash up in South Korea. And Rex Tillerson pointed to that and said, that shows our sanctions are working. People are starving to death. How fucked up is that? How fucking morally bankrupt, sociopathic motherfucker do you have to be to think that is you're doing right? Good job. The fishermen are starving to death. Waha! Look at us go. So, hope that answers that statement, question. This is on the Boy Scouts. I did a segment on Redacted tonight about the sexual abuse, crisis of the Boy Scouts. Thousands, tens of thousands of boys molested, some probably raped. And it's a little article here, a little article there. It should be everywhere. Everyone should know this is what's going on in the Boy Scouts. This is not a little problem. This is destroying tens of thousands of lives. How is this let's go give it a little article. Yeah, you can put it in the back of the blog about how you join the Boy Scouts, probably get molested. So this is from Rosemary Jane. She said, this is a bit of a story, but I think it's important. She said, my local public school district actively recruits boys for the Boy Scouts. As in pulling the boys out of class so they can go to an informational meeting on what the Scouts are and why they should join. And all without parental permission to skip the class. So they didn't ask the parents. They're just yanking kids out of class and saying, hey, sit here and let us tell you all the reasons you should join the Boy Scouts. She then says, I know this because the school sent my first grader son. God, first grade, what age is that? That's like a little tiny kid. I don't know what age it is. But my first grader son to one of these BS meetings, and after I heard about it, I was chewing on admin ass all the next day. I don't know if chewing ass was the best way to end that statement. Is that an expression now? I'm constantly feeling old. Is that like, I got you, I chewed your ass? I don't know. I don't think so. Anyway, point still made. I'm just getting sidetracked. Point still made. Thank you, Rosemary Jane, for giving a shit about your son and making sure he doesn't join the Boy Scouts, or at least not while they're dealing with this crazy sexual abuse scandal. I didn't know that goes on. I didn't know that they actually pull kids out of class to try and talk them into joining the Boy Scouts. And of course, most parents, I get it. I'm not a parent, but most parents are overworked. They're exhausted. And if their first grader comes up and goes, hey, the kids are joining Boy Scouts and I want to be there because my friends are there and they told me to go. It's like most parents are like, all right, sure, whatever. I don't, like, even if they're not into the Boy Scouts, most parents are like, all right, good. But do you think that might change a little if they knew the numbers? if they knew that the Boy Scouts' own documentation, their own documentation, shows over 12,000 cases of sexual assault? It's mind-blowing that's not talked about more. All right, Adam Housen says, "Hey Lee, glad to hear from you again." Oh, sorry, this is a personal email. Sorry, that's my brother. Sorry, no, I'm kidding. Hey Lee, glad to hear from you again. So I have a question. I guess he means that I did another video. So I have a question about the current political situation in China. What the hell is even going on between the U.S. and China because of tariffs? So I actually want to get more into this on Redacted Night coming up soon. I'm hoping to have Richard Wolff on, Professor Richard Wolff on soon to talk about it. But I don't know all the details, but I do know some things. One is that it's just going to hurt the American worker. It's already begun to hurt the American worker. And part of the reason it's being done is because the U.S. we are a dying monster. We are a massive empire, both militarily, economically, and in order to maintain that, especially with our environment collapsing around us, in order to maintain that, we have to try and fuck over other countries in a variety of ways. Sometimes stealing their resources, sometimes fucking with their economies in other ways. So China is the rising economy, right? They have a lot more people than us. And one of the ways we're dealing with it is by trying to fuck over their products, their trade, protectionism. And when you're the most powerful country, and a lot of the world uses the dollar still, you can do these things. You can say, hey, you do the fuck what we want, and then we'll help you out, and you don't do what we want, we'll fuck you over. Anyway, that's part of the reason. Now, I heard Richard Wolff on one interview, and this is why I want to have him on, and I will in a couple of weeks. I think he said that Trump knows he needs he knows there's a recession coming. JP Morgan Chase, the Fed, Goldman Sachs, they all say a recession, or even could be even worse, a crisis, economic crisis or recession is coming in 2020. That's their estimate. Maybe they can push it a little farther, but probably 2020, maybe sooner. And Trump knows this, and he knows that could hurt his chances of winning the election. If the economy tanks, he's not winning that election. And so his answer is he wants the Fed to drop interest rates to boost the economy so he wins this election. It's possible that he knows these tariffs will hurt the U.S., and he's okay with that because if the U.S. gets hurt, the Fed will drop the interest rates in order to boost U.S. economy, and that'll be good for him. That'll be good for his re-election chances. So there's possibility that he is thinking that far down the road. And I know some people are like, oh, he's a fucking idiot. He doesn't think that far down the road. But he is a fucking idiot, but he's gone his whole life living off of bankruptcy and threatening other companies. So that's kind of his thing. Like, if there is something he's going to know and understand, it's how to, be bankrupt and still look like you're doing well, which is, I think, what he's trying to do here. So there's a lot going on there. There's a lot. But really, I think at the root of it has to do with the dying empire, using all of our tools that we have to try and force countries that are up and coming to bend to our will. And, it's a horrible way to behave, but it's also unsustainable. As long as we're doing that, we're not fixing climate change, we're not fixing environmental destruction, we're decimating the world and instead focusing on how we can force that country or that country to fucking bend over to us. And that's not really where our mind should be at. That's not really how the world should be set up. That's not really what we should be focusing on as a people or as a species. But we'll get more into those details on tariffs soon on Redacted Tonight. All right, final comment before I announce the winners of the comedy special. T.R. Farmer says, hey, Lee, you hear about the 16 of the POTUS DNC candidates were HRC superdelegates, WTF. So, I didn't realize it was 16. That once I start thinking a little about it, that sounds about right. I couldn't list. If you asked me to list the presidential candidates for the Democratic side, maybe I could get to 10. Maybe. And there's 24 or something. But it doesn't surprise me that 16 of them, assuming this is correct, which I think it is, 16 of them are worse. So the fact that superdelegate's not a surprise because Democratic politicians, if you are in politics, a higher office in the Democratic Party, you are automatically a superdelegate. So all the senators and Congress and shit like that in the Democratic Party, they are the superdelegates. Now, or last time around, they were the superdelegates. They got rid of 2/3 of them, but that's just in the first vote. They can force it to the second vote in the convention, and if that happens, then all the superdelegates are back into it. That's aside from the point. The last time around, if you were in Democratic politics, probably superdelegate. Okay, fair enough. So 16 of them being superdelegates is not really that much of a surprise. But it's 16 of them were Hillary Clinton superdelegates, meaning that they are all basically aligned with Hillary Clinton politics last time around. And that's kind of a little more shocking. I mean, it's not that shocking, but it's a little more shocking. Even some of the slightly more left-wing, like Elizabeth Warren and Bill de Blasio, they all went for Hillary, ultimately. Some of them held off for a little while, but they went for Hillary because they know where their bread is buttered. They were supporting the Democratic machine. That's who's going to get them elected. So they went with Hillary. And to me, that's kind of horrifying. It's like the ones that weren't Hillary Clinton superdelegates are like Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, and, people that weren't in politics like Beto O'Rourke wasn't a superdelegate because he was nothing a year ago or 2 years ago and is still nothing except a presidential candidate. Anyway, that is kind of shocking that it's that many, meaning the Democratic Party has succeeded in making it so that most of your choices, even with this many people running for president, most of your choices are Democratic Party establishment. They're not outside the box. There's a couple that are outside. If you want to go outside of Democratic Party establishment, you've got Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie Sanders, Mike Gravel, Marianne Williamson, I think. That might be it. That might be... I don't know who else you'd name that is outside the Democratic Party establishment. The fucking CEO of Starbucks, who I think he stepped down. He's not running anymore, I don't think. Okay, let's get to, it's a fucking clusterfuck. Just to sum that up, clusterfuck. Just to put a little clusterfuck point on the end of that. And I know we're going to have to talk about this shit for the next 2 years. Oh, God. All right. Winners of the comedy special are Rick Maynard and Leslie Johnson. And in order to get your free download of my hour-long stand-up comedy special, just email leecampledger@protonmail.com. That's Rick Maynard and Leslie Johnson. If you want to be entered to win a copy this week, leave a comment under this video. Any kind of comment, you'll be entered to possibly win the comedy special. If you want to purchase the comedy special, the full hour, watch it tonight, watch it this weekend. It's $3.90 over at leecampcomedyspecial.com or $5.90 if you want the to own the download and to also get the comedy album with it, my comedy album, Pepper Spray the Tears Away. So you can get all of that, leecampcomedyspecial.com. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I think that's all I have for you. Oh, check out the podcast, Common Censored. Did I say that? All right. Keep fighting.